Good morning, everybody. My name is Christina Clem. I'm on the comms team here at the AARP Washington State Office. Thank you so much for spending part of your morning with us today. This is our Let's Talk Caregiving session, and we're going to talk a little bit about a new program in Washington State called WA Cares. Before I dive into it, I just want to let everybody know that I am recording this session. So if you missed something or you weren't able to write something down or you want to go back and say, I wanted to listen to the thing that happened at 4 minutes and 32 seconds, I will, after a couple of days of this, we will record this. We will put it up on our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, and then I send out an email to everybody who registered, whether they attended or not, with a link to the recording. So the recording will be available. So no stress. Feel free to just sit back and listen, or participate how you like. This is a Zoom session. We will be taking questions from the audience. There are a couple of ways that we can do that. The easiest way is there's a little chat function. If everybody will look at the bottom of your screen, if you're on a computer, should be the same if you're on a cell phone or mobile or smartphone. There's a little chat box. So you can type your question for our folks and our experts in the little chat box. And we can take your questions from there. And I don't know, I don't see the raise hand tool. So we do expect to have a fair amount of people. So I think putting something into the chat box for the question will probably work.
It's in the reaction.
Does it have it in the reaction settings? Okay, there's a little, on my screen at least, at the very bottom, right next to the chat is a little heart that says react. Feel free to send us a heart. I think that's lovely. And there you go. Mary found it. Thank you, Mary. So you can put your little hand up there and we can take questions. So thanks so much. We're going to go ahead and get into it. I would like to introduce our host of this program. We are very fortunate to have her, Julia Yarbo. She is an AARP volunteer. Julia is a former family caregiver for her mom, so she's been in your shoes. She understands the journey that you are on. She is also an award-winning broadcast journalist and publisher of Keeping It Real Caregiving, which is a Substack newsletter and website. Julia, I'll go ahead and hand it off to you.
All right, Christina, thank you so much. And thank you everybody for joining us. I know it's the middle of the week and everybody has plenty on their plate. So we hope that we will have a jam-packed hour to give you a lot of information. As Christina said, we do have time for Q&A. I'm sure there will be lots of questions. I have a lot of questions as well. And just to give you a quick little overview of what we'll be going over, I love to see some of you on camera, and even those who aren't, by either by nods of heads or a show of hands. How many of you are a caregiver, think you're going to be, or maybe somebody is helping to care for you already? Right. So yeah, so a lot of hands going up. So this is the reality that we see around the country, as you know. Pretty much everybody in some way, shape, or form will be touched by the reality of family caregiving. And as caregivers, we're the backbone of making sure that it works to take care of our family members. And the other element of that is long-term care. And there are so many issues and elements to learn about that. How does it work? Who offers it? How do I pay for it? What type of coverage do I have? Can it alleviate some of the stress and strain of being a family caregiver? So today, what we're going to do is dive into something that's pretty exciting for Washington State. The Washington, or WA Cares, WA Cares, it's Washington's, like Washington State's long-term care insurance program. So not a separate company, but Washington State. We're going to talk about how it works, The goal is to make home care a little more affordable for everyday individuals. We're going to talk about how the program works, who may qualify, what services are covered under this program, and how really at the end of the day it can help in
Julia somehow got muted.
Yeah, Julia, somehow you're on mute. Sorry.
Oh, I must have hit something on my computer.
There we go.
Sorry.
Technology, yay! Okay.
This is a completely new program launched this summer. So we're going to look at, where we're at right now, talk about the eligibility and how that expands over time. And this will give you a good primer to learn, is this something that could benefit you and your family, and what may be coming down the line in the future. Quick note on that. I am new to Washington State, about a year and a half. So this is a good primer for me as well. And I'm really excited to be able to see that our state is working in a way to help individual families. So our guest today, we are really lucky to be joined by, I'll just say, two individuals, two women, powerhouses who have worked very hard to put WA Cares in place. I'm going to put my glasses on and I'm going to read this verbatim. I'd like to introduce you to Andrea Mevis Sanchez, and she is the interim director for WA Cares Fund at DSHS. So she is no stranger to this field, folks. She has spent the last 22 years leading programs and policy development for aging network services in the nonprofit and the public sector, which means she gets it. She understands how all of this fits together for all of us here in the state. She spent the last 6 years building the foundation to implement the WA Cares Fund and working in collaboration with a number of other agencies. So Andrea, thank you so much for being here, because you're going to be in the spotlight taking a lot of questions, I know. And then another name that any of you who are involved with AARP's advocacy work, you probably see some of the emails come in and are familiar with Kathy McCall. And we are so lucky to have her with us today because she is busy. She's extremely busy. She's the advocacy director for AARP Washington State, and she manages the legislative initiatives, which, as we know, there are a lot of legislative items that have to do with aging and care. She works with coalition partnerships and advocacy campaigns that really address the elder rights, financial protection, retirement security, caregiver support, and a long list of other items. I've seen Kathy in the halls in Olympia, and she knows her stuff, and she fights really hard to make sure that these issues are tackled with our legislators. So ladies, thank you very much for being here so that we have plenty of time to get through everything. I'd like to turn the floor over to Andrea. She's going to walk us through this program, and get out your pens and paper and notes, and let's dive in.
Thank you so much, Julia. Good afternoon, everyone. So we have a little slide deck to share today to give you a better understanding of how WA Cares works and how it fits with support for family caregivers. And right now it looks like it's showing the screen that has like the notes. There we go. That looks good. Thank you, Christina. All right, so we'll go ahead and
Cool. Yeah, is everybody seeing it okay? I got it. Okay.
great. And I'm joined here by my colleague from the Office of the Insurance Commissioner, Tyler Langford. He's going to be here to answer some questions if anyone has any on our new supplemental long-term care insurance product that Washington is also creating alongside the WA Cares Fund. So why don't we kick it off with the next slide? Here we go. Thanks, Christina. So, WA Cares is a public insurance model that was created to give people a more affordable way to pay for their long-term care. It's a program that lets people contribute when their income is higher when they're working. People stop contributing when they stop working. And then they can access care when they need it, which may be later in life. This is a program that covers almost all workers, and it ends up being more affordable than long-term care, private long-term care insurance, especially at the time that folks end up needing care. Next slide, please. The program works by people contributing automatically. So employers collect premiums from workers right from their paycheck, and it's just a little over 0.5% during your working years. And you only need to contribute when you're working. We started contributions in 2023. We have benefits that became available July of 2026. So in order to qualify for benefits, you need to have paid in for a certain number of years. And then you also have to have a care need. And then you can use your benefits. It's a $36,500 lifetime benefit amount that will continue to grow over time with inflation on any covered services that WellCares covers for your long-term care needs. And we have quite a variety of services that we do cover. There's no out-of-pocket cost when you need care. We will pay those providers directly. Next slide. This is what the contributions look like for people over the course of a career. So if you've got a typical worker who's making around $59,000 a year, they're paying in about $29 a month, which adds up to just over $10,000 over a 30-year career. To earn less in benefits than you actually contribute, you'd have to make an average of $210,000 each year for 30 years. So it's quite affordable, even for folks who are at the higher income range. People will get a $36,500 benefit, no matter how long or no matter how much they end up contributing in dollars. Next slide. So this slide shows what the contribution requirements are. So how long does someone have to pay in before they can actually use their coverage? There's 3 different scenarios that we have for people to qualify. It's based on the number of years that people work, and it's based on a 500-hour per year threshold. So that's about quarter time that people would work to have their year count towards earning credits for WellCares. That first pathway, that permanent pathway, is for people who contribute for 10 years at any point in their career. Once you've contributed for 10 years, then you have access to that benefit when you end up needing care. The second pathway that we have is we're calling a temporary pathway. It's based on a look back period when people apply for their benefit. So when someone comes to apply for their benefit, if they have contributed for at least 3 years out of the last 6, the 6 years is the look back period, they can also receive the full benefit amount. And then we've also got a prorated amount for people who maybe didn't have 10 years left in their career when we started collecting premiums for the program. So for those folks, if you were born before 1968, then you can have permanent access to 10% of the full benefit amount for each year that you contribute. So if you contribute for 2 years, for example, then you get 20% of the benefit amount. And those folks who were born before 1968, if they end up needing care, they can still use that temporary pathway. So if they paid in for 3 years, they're not just getting 30%, they're getting that full benefit amount as well. Next slide. In order to use the benefit, we do an assessment. It's usually done in the person's home, and we are trying to determine if the person needs help with at least 3 activities of daily living, and that need is going to continue for at least 90 days. And we're looking at things like, bathing, transferring, mobility, medication management, toileting, bed mobility, and eating. And we also consider activities that people may need supervision for. So folks who have maybe a cognitive impairment can also come through the door and use the benefit for their needs. Next slide. Once you've been approved, then people can choose how they want to spend their $36,500. So we have a variety of different services. We register providers directly with WellCares Fund. We've got services to help people stay in their homes. We have personal care where, worker can come in and provide that care to someone in their home. We offer home safety evaluations, modifications to the home if it needs to become more accessible. We offer home delivered meals, transportation, equipment, technology, personal emergency response systems, and housework and yard work. We have services also to support your family caregiver. So a lot of times an unpaid family caregiver may be providing care. They could become paid for to provide that care for their loved one through WellCares. They could also get a substitute person to come in. Maybe someone from a home care agency could come in to provide respite so they can take a break. We also have education and training for caregivers. We have behavior supports, dementia and behavior supports to help support families who might be caring for a loved one with dementia. And we have care transition coordination to help people who may be coming out of a hospital or coming out of a nursing home and going back into their home. People could use their benefit also to move into and live in an adult family home. They could also use it for adult day services, maybe just going to a center for the day, or they could use it in an assisted living facility, a nursing home, which also assisted living could also include memory care services as well. Next slide. We have an online portal for people to come through and apply for their benefits. It's available now. People submit their application online, and we have a way to confirm that they've contributed long enough to get that benefit. It happens behind the scenes. People will be notified that, yes, they have the benefit available to them. We will call folks and schedule an assessment, do that assessment with them in person, and then approve folks to use their benefit. People manage their benefit account within the online portal, so they can see the providers that they're going to work with, and they can approve the amounts that they are planning to use of their benefit towards particular providers. We do have support for people who maybe aren't as tech savvy. We have a benefits and customer care team that can help walk people through the application. We also have our local area agencies on aging who can provide more in-person support if someone needs that. We have an 800 number, so it's 844-CARE4WA, and that's how people can reach out to us to get help. And then folks can also use an authorized user, maybe a family member or a friend who could get in and help them apply and manage that account. Next slide. There we go. Thank you. So WellCares also worked with the LTSS Trust Commission and the private insurance industry to create some standards for a supplemental private long-term care insurance policy market. The idea behind this is it's kind of a private-public partnership that we're looking for, kind of like Medicare does. These private supplemental policies would kick in after WellCares benefits. So WellCares would pay the first $36,500, and then this supplemental product could kick in after. It's something that we believe would create a more affordable way for people to extend their WellCares fund benefit. So, some folks will only need $36,500. Some folks will need more than that. For people who need more, we want to have an opportunity for them to purchase that on the private market and have it be more seamless than a traditional policy may otherwise be. The Office of the Insurance Commissioner just created rules for that in May, and we're starting to work with the private insurance industry to help them understand what this might look like for them. Next slide. You can also take your benefits out of state. So if you end up moving after you've contributed for at least 3 years, you can opt in within 1 year of leaving. You have to continue contributing during your working year so that it's equitable with people who are in state. And we have until 2030 to make those benefits available to folks out of state. So we'll be working on that over the next couple of years to make sure folks can access those benefits in any state in the nation. Next slide. So WellCares can help caregivers in a number of different ways. People who maybe were providing care for free, who are family members, could start earning wages to provide that care. They could also get a break from caregiving. So having a respite worker come in to make sure that you can take care of yourself as a caregiver. We cover things like home delivered meals or transportation. That could be something that takes a little bit of that extra care that you're providing off your plate. And then we have resources that people can access, like support groups or educational information that might help people cope with, being a family caregiver. Next slide. For folks who are interested in how to become a paid family caregiver, the person who's getting care has to qualify for benefits. Once they're approved to use benefits, then they can choose from a couple of different options that we have. And these are built off of what we have experience with so far in Washington. As a family member or even a spouse or registered domestic partner could get paid to provide that care. And they need to work with either the Consumer Direct Care Network of Washington, which is a large agency that helps family members, friends, neighbors, and just regular personal care aides make sure they're meeting the requirements of the state around training and oversight. So they could become employed through the Consumer Direct Care Network of Washington, or they could choose a home care agency and become employed through the home care agency. And that agency would be able to get them some minimal training so that they meet the requirements, and then they can be paid by WellCares Fund. So next, thank you. So how it works in 4 steps. First, you're checking to see if your loved one is eligible to use their benefit. Second one is they can apply to access their benefit. And once they're approved, then you can apply to work as a caregiver. You can do that through CDWA or registered home care agency. And then once you're hired and trained, then those agencies pay, and WellCares reimburses those agencies for the hours that you're providing as a family caregiver. Next slide, thank you. So when you're thinking about, how to choose an employer for CDWA, one of the things to consider is, a family member or a friend can apply to be the caregiver. The Consumer Directed Employer of Washington will do the pre-authorizations for services. Beneficiaries will have the option to complete a care agreement. So if you want to complete a care agreement with your family member, you can do that. The beneficiary determines how many hours of care they want. So they can decide how much they want to receive from CDWA. We do have 2 set rates. We have a standard rate and we have a family rate with CDWA. So that's kind of that pathway. The other pathway is through a home care agency. So the family member could apply to be the caregiver. That agency is going to be responsible for the pre-authorization for services. In a home care agency, the agency actually creates a care plan. So for folks who are looking for more support around what should I be doing for my loved one, the home care agency could provide that through a care plan. Some agencies do have some minimum hours or weekly hour requirements. And then rates are going to vary based on your location and the beneficiary's care needs. It's a little bit different than CDWA that has a set rate. So with that, I think that's everything we have. I will send it back to you, Julia, if you'd like to facilitate some Q&A.
Yeah, actually, thank you so much for walking us through that. It is a lot to unpack and to sort of wrap our heads around. I had one quick question, and then I want to bring in Kathy to talk a little bit more on the, on the state side of things. I saw a couple of questions in the chat, and somebody was asking about if they're no longer working. And so as this program is completely, built out, is it all employers within Washington state and they're automatically part of this, or do employers have to opt in order for their employees to take advantage of it?
Yeah, so all employers in Washington are automatically required to collect those premiums from their workers. The only exception is tribes. So the tribal nations, and that they as employers have the option to opt in or opt out because of tribal sovereignty.
And then back to the a question that I get from a lot of my readers is, how can I be paid to be a family caregiver? So I wanted to touch on that just quickly. The two options, the pathways for a family member. Once somebody's in caregiving, they may already be up to their eyeballs in dealing with what is in front of them. With this program, is there a way for somebody who anticipates that this may be coming to go ahead and be part of one of those two pathways? Or do they need to make sure that first their loved one is in the program, then they qualify, then they have a status that would allow them to be a paid family caregiver?
Yeah, they would need to make sure that their loved one is qualified first. Um, People can start working and being paid after they receive just a 5 hour training around safety and orientation. And then they have a time frame. It's 120 days to complete the rest of their training. So we do need them to be connected, though, already to a beneficiary for them to start working with walk cares and starting to get through that process.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think that was one of the questions somebody asked, what type of training that they need to have. And then I promise one other question from my end, and then we'll switch gears a little bit. Of the care agencies that would be qualified for a family member to be employed by, are those agencies pre-vetted and chosen, or does it cover any home care agency within that has a license in Washington state?
Yeah, great question. We actually do require the home care agencies to register with us. So they go through a verification process to make sure they meet the minimum qualifications. And then we post their information on our Walk Cares provider directory so people can see, which home care agencies are registered with us. And any of those would be able to take a family member on for paying a Walk Cares, helping a Walk Cares beneficiary.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and folks, I think you can already see a lot of moving parts with this program. As with any new product, there are questions, there are things that are still being evolved. So I want to bring in Kathy and let's talk a little bit about how all of this actually came about and what are the key things that from this point moving forward, what are some of the elements that as consumers, as advocacy leaders, what do we need to be watching for? What types of things? How can we all work together to make things even smoother?
That's a great question, Julia, and thank you to Andrea and for being an incredible partner in this work. So I always like to share the story of when I started at AARP almost 13 years ago, almost 14, well, coming up on 14. Anyway, walked in and this was day one. So AARP has been a fierce advocate for long-term care. And basically, if you think about it, a lot or almost everything AARP does in terms of advocacy is focused on long-term care, whether it's your financial health, your physical health, your emotional health, your cognitive health. All of those things really look at how we can lengthen the quality of our lives. And so Walk Cares, we are uniquely positioned in Washington state. We are the only state that has implemented a public benefit to support long-term care. I also am a commissioner on the Long-Term Care Trust Commission here for the state of Washington. And so we work very closely on this policy. And again, there's no playbook. We're the first in the nation to do this. And so it has been, a lot of sharing our shared living experiences. So I am a caregiver for my 88-year-old mother who has vascular dementia and Alzheimer's and also some other healthcare issues. And I've got to say that, being a caregiver is probably one of the hardest jobs that I've ever had to do. And I also my heart was really touched by Dolly Parton's story. If all of you, you might have known her as, Music Hall of Fame winner, several, multiple album awards and music awards and movie credentials, and a philanthropist and, helping children read and literacy. But the other thing that she did was she was a caregiver for her husband. And she literally said, that one of the biggest challenges and the thing that impacted her own health was being a caregiver, because she put everything else in second place. Instead of, focusing in on herself, she was focused in on her husband, Carl, who they had been married for 60 years. So caregiving is hard because it feels, difficult. And that's why WA Cares was developed. That was one reason. Everybody knows that caregiving is difficult. The other one is that the private insurance market had failed and long-term care insurance had become too expensive. The risk pool became too big, too great for actually benefits to be paid out because of the aging of the population. By 2030, 4 short years away, our population is expected to grow where more people will be over 65 than under 18. And so this demographic shift has the aging of our population. And with that aging comes a lot of expenses when it comes to healthcare and long-term care. And so the private insurance market saw that, and they pulled up stakes in most cases and had to leave the market, which was unfortunate and left a lot of people who had paid policies for years and years and years without long-term care insurance. WA Cares is not the be-all, end-all. There's still people that can buy private insurance. If you have the money and the resources to buy private long-term care insurance, go forward, do it. There's some incredible products out there. But again, they're expensive, and you need to make sure you read the policy very carefully and that it meets your own needs. So if you have a family caregiver, a son, daughter, grandchild, a spouse, a partner, a close family friend, aunt, uncle, whatever, make sure that your policy reflects those caregiving decisions. If you want to go live in a long-term care facility and that is your choice, make sure that it pays for that care as well. So with anything, there's an element of planning and anticipating your future and thinking about what it means to age and what it means to age the way that you want to, with choice, dignity, and purpose. So, and WA Cares is just another tool. It's a significant one, but it also is just a tool that needs to be combined in with your overall plan for how you want to live as you age. And again, it's a fabulous opportunity, fabulous program. I'm very proud to have worked on it. It's one of my incredible highlights to have worked also with our team. Christina has been with me on this journey, and Jason Erskine, I know, is on this call, and Bruce Carlson, and so many others. And I just really am proud of AARP and the work that we've done to move this model forward. We get calls from other states and state legislators wanting to know what we did here in Washington State and wanting to think how they can replicate what we've done in their state as well, because everyone is aging and it's the cool thing to do.
And I'm going to jump in here. Kathy, thank you so much for all of the work that you have done to have this in place. A question as this unfolds and evolves, what types of feedback and information are you now getting from various insurance companies? And this is actually for both Kathy and Andrea, if you guys want to chime in. You said that one of the stipulations is that we can look at walk cares as like your first bucket of funds, and then if you needed a supplemental. Is there any impact of having this in place that might or could impact having a secondary insurance based on, are companies open to this idea? Are they open to the concept that yes, we're all aging, we're all trying to come up with plans, but is there any sense that they feel that this is cutting into their market? So are they still willing to work with a client who maybe has this as the first bucket and needs supplemental in addition? I know it was sort of a rambling question, but I see it in two sections that are merged into one. And I'm just curious, is that something that we should be thinking about as this program evolves?
I'd really turn to Tyler and to Andrea to respond to that. They've been on the front lines talking to the insurance industry.
Yeah, and I think, when we first started exploring this in the state, we did have feedback from 5 different insurance companies that we worked with to design the product. And I think, what was attractive to them was we're taking the first $36,500 risk, and then they're picking up after that. I think, it's going to take a little bit of time for them to work with Washington State to figure out what this product might look like. I know Tyler from OIC has had some contact with insurance companies. So maybe Tyler, would you like to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So part of the question was, do insurers think that this and maybe the question was, is WACARES sort of cutting into the traditional long-term care market? And I can't speak for them necessarily, but I wouldn't think so. I mean, I would think that they would view this as more of a complement than necessarily cutting into the market, because it is a much broader cross-section of consumers that have WACARES available to them versus traditional long-term care insurance, because it is much more expensive, as we've heard and as you all know. So that's what I would say first. And then in terms of insurance companies entering the supplemental market, we're optimistic that they will. And there, like Andrea said, there has been interest. It's just a question of who wants to sort of take the leap first and kind of test the waters. So yeah, I can't speak for them necessarily on all the things that go into their product development process, but we're hopeful that sooner rather than later, this market will kind of take shape.
Excellent. Yeah, it's just an exciting time as our entire nation ages, right? So this is something that all of us need to be thinking about. I'm looking at the time. We have 20 minutes left, right, Christina? So should we dive into some of the questions that came in, and that way we can touch on all the different things, and once we go through those questions, we'll dream up some more.
Yes, definitely. I've been taking some notes. So we do have a couple of questions of folks that if they are already retired, are they able to participate in the program?
So this program right now is only available to people who are working because it comes out of their wages. Folks who are self-employed, I know, we may have people who end up being self-employed. They can opt into the program, and so they would be able to pay in and earn coverage that way.
And it's 500 a
I
year.
think the other thing that's really important is a lot of people, when they retire from their job, is that they realize that we see this a lot, that the first 2 or 3 years they visit the grandchildren, they travel, they play golf, they do all the fishing, and then they like, well, what now? And a lot of older adults, after they've kind of retired and had some time to relax, they go back to the workforce, and they go back part-time. And it's important to keep in mind that it's just 500 hours a year for this benefit to be a vesting year. And so what we see is, older adults, I've talked to many older adults that, worked for Boeing, and now they're an aerospace consultant, and they work, enough to actually meet the requirements for walk airs, and that's a vesting year. Or they turn a hobby into a job, or into a product, and they're selling things on Etsy. I met somebody at an arts and crafts fair, and he's creating, wood chopping boards for, high-end chefs and cook and restaurants. And it was just something that he did as a hobby. And now he's, creating a job out of it. And I told him about walk airs. I'm like, you could sign up and opt in for walk airs for this benefit. So there's, I think, different pathways for people who are, consider themselves retired, but want to go back and maybe do something to supplement their income, or just, to, fulfill their life's ambition of making cutting boards or beautiful artwork.
And Kathy, I have a question, a follow-up to that, and that's a wonderful piece of information that I'll share with others as well. So I'm curious, with the work requirements, if somebody lives in Washington State but works remotely for a company that is not based in Washington State, do they or do they not qualify?
Andrea can take that one. We were just having a
Sure.
meeting talking about this yesterday.
Yeah, so it's only for people who work in Washington. And if they move out of the state and work for another employer, they could opt in so that they can continue to pay in through that employer, but that is their choice.
I want to get, actually, we talked a little bit about self-employed. We do have a couple of questions here about, if I'm self-employed, how do I opt in to walk airs? And then we do have some folks that have asked, I already retired, can I do it retroactively? And if I don't qualify for walk airs, but could I get the supplemental insurance when it's available? So
Right.
self-employed, how do folks who are self-employed opt in to walk airs?
Yeah, so they would do that through the Employment Security Department. We have information on our website that leads people to that self-employed application. We can, thank you, Sebastian, put that in the chat. Thank you.
Magic. But Sebastian, also from the walk airs team, behind the scenes, is posting things in the chat. I will collect these links as well, folks, and send them in a email recap that will have a link to this recording, and then the resources that you can do. How about I can't get walk airs? Can I purchase that cool supplemental insurance that folks are talking about?
Yeah, I can take that one. And the answer is no, because the supplemental policies, the way you qualify, or the part of the way that you qualify for the benefit, is exhausting your walk airs benefits. So part of the criteria that agents and brokers need to look at when they're selling these policies is whether someone is paying into walk airs or has already qualified, has already met the contribution requirements. So yeah, what we wanted to avoid was someone being sold a policy that they ultimately can't use, because the way that the statutes were set up, it's the payment of the benefit is dependent on exhausting walk airs benefits. So they really are tied together.
Thanks, Tyler. Liz had a question just for clarification. And I think this is important because this is so new. So benefits did just open. And so there are kind of a limited amount of people who are qualifying right now. And as we get farther into the program, more people will qualify to use it. Liz says, to clarify, for the caregiver to get paid, it is the recipient who must meet the eligibility requirements, correct? She said, as many recipients are 65 plus and didn't pay into the program, are they not eligible?
Yeah, she's correct. So yeah, the person has to be eligible to use their Walk Cares Fund benefit because they have a long-term care need, and then they could pay a family member to provide that care through the Walk Cares benefit.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up question to that as well. Um, so quite often we hear from family caregivers, especially those in the middle income ranges where you don't have, you know, unlimited funds to pay for care, but you don't qualify because you earn too much. So you're right there in the middle. With this program, if you're a family member whose loved one qualifies, is there any stipulation of what your financial status is in order to also then possibly be paid as a caregiver through this program?
There's no financial requirement for either the beneficiary or the caregiver. Yeah, we don't look at income or resources or anything like that.
Robert has got a question here. A little twist. If my brother worked in Oregon, commuting from Washington, and we talked about this a little bit, should I check with a program in Oregon for what AARP might have? Walk Cares isn't AARP. It's just all workers and Walk Cares. And no, because Oregon doesn't have this yet. We're the very, very first state, but it is transferable. So eventually it's portable. You could take it to another state. So if you started working in Washington, say you worked for a couple of years in Washington and then moved to Oregon and wanted to continue eligibility to get Walk Cares, then you could continue to pay into it from Oregon. You would, correct me if I'm wrong, you would have to establish a way to make that payment, and then you could qualify after, of course, the eligibility and stuff. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Yep, you got it, Christina.
Just my brain is spinning right now. There are just so many different elements to this that come up. So with traditional long-term care insurance policies, we've always been taught, and we have the conversations of start early, think long-term ahead for yourself or a loved one. Same concept with this, or pretty much any age. Do you recommend that, let's say there's somebody who's working and they're 35, but they're in the tech industry, for example. They don't know if their position is going to be here in 3 years. Should they go ahead and sign in with their employer and take advantage of the program? And is sooner still better than later?
I think the cool thing about Walk Cares is you don't actually have to think about it because you will automatically be contributing if you're working in Washington. So folks are earning coverage just by working in the state. Their employers are submitting those premiums to ESD, so they're earning that coverage. When they want to start thinking about it is if they're going to leave the state, if they've already paid in for 3 years, then they need to decide, do I want to take this coverage with me and pay in each year based on the wages I'm earning in another state so I can get those benefits out of state when I actually need them.
And I'm just being devil's advocate here. I can think of, maybe a younger employee who, looks at their work statement and then says, well, wait a minute, I'm healthy, I'm fine. I don't need this. Why do I have to have X dollars, even if it's, $7 or $8 a month come out of my paycheck? Have you had any pushback from younger employees? What has that landscape looked like, and what can we, as all AARP supporters and aging advocates in our own way, what's some of the messaging that we can help spread on that?
I'd like to jump in on this one, Andrea, as well, is that we know for a fact that number one is people don't think that they're ever going to need long-term care. But the reality is more than 70% of us will need some type of long-term care in the future. And you're correct. I have 20 something daughters, and they are just like, what is this thing? Why am I paying this? I'm not going to need it. I'm like, you know what? But it's going to be there for you when you need it. And people don't anticipate. And so, we're talking about aging and everything else. But this is also for, a cataclysmic accident. Let's say you're a skier and you ski and you break your back. And you have your insurance will only cover so much of your care, and it might not cover all your long-term care. And so this would actually be a benefit that you could use, for your recovery. Maybe it's 3 or 4 weeks of in-home care that you need, and you get back up on your feet or your leg heals, what have you. So it's important to think that, and to keep in mind also, people think that Medicare pays for long-term care insurance. It does not. And so the other thing is family caregivers. So that same son that falls and hurts himself, it's usually mom or dad, sister, brother, that steps in, and they spend their own money out of pocket. We have data that says it's roughly $7,000 a year to help support somebody else. So, that's all of these contributing factors to why Walk Cares is here for you, because people don't anticipate. And in fact, we know that people have not planned adequately for their retirement savings. We did a study a while back, and when we asked people how they plan to save for retirement, overwhelmingly, people said, I have a 401k, I'm saving through my workplace, etc. But in reality, in this survey, people actually said, I'm going to inherit money, as this is their retirement savings plan. They're going to inherit money. They're going to sell a business to Microsoft and make millions of dollars. Or my favorite one was that they were going to win the lottery, and that's how they were going to pay for their retirement and long-term care. This is a practical, sensible solution for people to slowly save for something that inevitably hopefully they don't ever have to use, but if they do, it's going to be there for them, and it's going to be a stopgap to help them in their time of crisis.
Is this something that all of us should send letters to our legislators to say, thank you for doing this, and we know it's new and we're still learning, but thank you? Would that be helpful and valuable because this is a new program?
Absolutely. I think sending letters, also sending emails to your kids or younger people to say, make sure you're planning for your retirement today.
I want to get into a couple more questions. First, I'm going to drop a little factoid. 40% of people who need long-term care are under the age of 65. So young people have accidents too. Stephen, I wanted to get to your question. You said, is there an age requirement to qualify as a beneficiary, or is the qualification dependent on the care needed?
The age requirement is 18 or older, so you just need to be an adult, and then it's all based on the care needs that you have.
Great. And then Annette just dropped something in, said she's a new resident, 2 years in Washington, over the age of 65. If I work part-time job, 500 hours a year, would that allow me to pay into and receive Walk Cares?
Yes, it definitely would. Every year you work at least 500 hours, you're earning a year towards the benefit.
And that's about 9.5 hours a week. Is that so? Couple of shifts at Trader Joe's and you're good to go. That's Trader Joe's is going to be if I retire and I'm just going to go work at the grocery store. Everybody seems happy there. Let's see here. Oh, one thing that I did want to ask is, we've made some improvements to the program as we've gone along. Like originally, near retirees, that the whole partial payment wasn't there, so we expanded the program to help those who might only be able to pay in for a few years before they retire. What happens if you pay in, then need to stop working for maybe a year, maybe you had a baby, needed to take care of someone, and so you went out of the job market and then you came back into the job market. Do you have to start all over again, or does kind of the tenure requirement, do you just pick up where you left?
Yeah, you would just pick up where you left off. So that tenure requirement is any year that you work. It doesn't have to, be consecutive. If you have a gap, that's okay. Just any 10 years throughout your career.
Great.
I had one other quick question. I know we're just about out of time. Um, how are those benefits paid out? Would a family member or the individual submit receipts for the care that they may be receiving and then it's reimbursed, or is it X amount per month? How is that determined?
Mhm. So for the majority of services, we will pay the providers directly, and the beneficiary and the provider decide what the rate will be, what the duration of services will be, and then the provider claims directly for that care. We do have, say it's a family caregiver, they would have to do something like, keep track of the times that they're actually working and then work with their employer to get paid. Um, we have some small reimbursable expenses like transportation or equipment and supplies, where we will allow folks to purchase and then submit for reimbursement. And I think those are the only two that's coming to mind right now.
Excellent. Thank you.
Shirley asked, is there a minimum annual amount of wage that you're required to do, or is it only the hours you work that qualify you?
Yeah, it's only the hours that you work. So as long as you've worked 500 hours, it doesn't matter how much that amounts to as far as premium payments. It's just you worked 500 hours, then that year's going to count.
Great. We're at time. How does this go so fast?
A lot of good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Like I had mentioned, and for those of you who weren't here at the beginning, all of this has been recorded. And I send out an email to everyone who registered, whether they attended or not. Too bad. And so they will get a link to this recording, so you can view it at your leisure, share it with someone that you think might find this information useful. I will also go and kind of look through here and see if there were any questions maybe that we weren't able to get to. But when I also send that email out with a link to recording, if there are questions that all of a sudden you thought of, feel free to reply to that email. I will see it, and so we can maybe answer that question directly with you via email. So thank you, everybody, so much for joining us today and learning a little bit about this brand new, spanking new, brand new program. Yay, Washington. And we really appreciate you spending some time with us today, because we know that you have many choices of how to spend your day. So appreciate you spending an hour with us. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Be safe.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.